Hello, good people, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History, where today, D. Presley Stanley keeps on talking. And we're going to get back to hear what she's saying right after this song, Heartache and Frustration.
He walked through the chapel, vows gone too fast. Flashbulbs were burning, but the moment didn't last. He carried us singing, sunlight in their bed, but the silence kept whispering inside her head. He's stuck in a hotel, love you can't hold. Every room is crowded, every story grows cold. Frustration's his shadow, it won't let him be. Heartbreak keeps knocking, old flames you can see. He called her mine, kissed her in the light. She cooked his bacon, held him through the night. But her picture was simple, just two alone, while the world kept intruding. Love turned to stone. Their eyes met again, the fire's still strong. He dropped to one knee, said he loved her all along. But the door closed behind him, the moment couldn't stay. She felt that he faded as he walked away. On the speedway set, she fell in too deep. He kissed her softly, a secret she'd keep. I'm sorry, he whispered, then he let her go. Now she treasures the memory more than you know. He's stuck in a hotel of love he can't hold. Every room is haunted, every story grows cold. Frustration and heartache, they echo through time. Three women, one singer, lost in the rhyme. Love's a hotel, he's trapped in the hall. Doors keep on closing, he can't find home at all.
Thank you for gathering here at Hillbilly Cat History, where we remember together and listen for the echoes. Today we're going to hear those echoes again from D. Stanley or Presley or whatever her name was. But first we're going to start off on the bookshelf. We got a non-Elvis book, we got an Elvis book. Let's take a look. The non-Elvis book is The Great Shark Hunt, Hunter S. Thompson. Let's take a look at this. And there he is. I guess that's Hunter Thompson on the front. Pretty plain on the side. It's just a bunch of text on the back. But Hunter S. Thompson, he is a crazy writer. He's the guy who wrote Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which was a movie that Johnny Depp was in. Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And Elizabeth's pointing out that I'm on an hour early for some people because we just changed time today. And then later, a lot of other people are going to change time in about 2 weeks. But I think Elizabeth always stays on the same time. So this is the new normal, at least for some people. Now, I have not read this book. I want to read this book. I just have never gotten to it. I've read other Hunter S. Thompson books. At the bottom, it says Gonzo, because that's the kind of journalism that he wrote, and I think he coined that phrase, Gonzo journalism, which I guess means he was willing to go to any length to get his story. And there's a lot of crazy stories about Hunter S. Thompson that would take up lots and lots of videos. Now let's take a look at the Elvis book for this episode. It's even thicker than that Hunter S. Thompson book and heavier because it's a hardback. It's The Unmaking of Elvis Presley, Careless Love by Peter Guralnick. And of course, Peter is the #1 writer in Elvis history today. He just published a new book about the Colonel's letters that he was able to access from the Graceland archive. But this is a much earlier book. I think this was the late 1990s. Let me look. This is 1998, it says. First edition. 1999. So just before the turn of the century, so it's kind of old now. And it basically covers from the point that Elvis, I think around the time he came home from the army and to the end of his life. And the Careless Love is about the ladies in his life. And it's kind of a companion book to Alana Nash's Baby Let's Play House. But it's one of these pillar books that you've got to have if you study Elvis and you're going to read seriously about Elvis and you want to read everything. And again, Peter, he's tracked down all kinds of information. He's got a good bibliography in there, and this was one of those books that was assembled before the internet, and therefore it's got a really good bibliography because you couldn't just look it up online, and it's still available. And now you can find a lot of these sources online that Peter actually had to find in real life. But now let's get into the story of why we're here. Dee Presley, she's been in some magazines. We're in Memphis. It's the late 70s, 1978 to be specific. And Dee, she just keeps on talking. Now here's a picture of Dee most people probably haven't seen. This is when she was married to the Stanley boys' father. Now it turns out that that was Dee's second marriage. See, she was married to another man. He was married to someone else within about 2 years. So it must not have lasted very long. And then she got married to, he appears to be a private here. I think that's what that one stripe is signifying. Private Stanley. She's described in the magazine article as the unhappy wife of an army sergeant and the mother of 3 young sons. So I think this is probably before they started to have children together. Now, when they did start to have children, this is from 1949. And it's about a baby boy Stanley is the name that's on this certificate of death. Name of deceased, baby boy Stanley. He was a boy. He was born on October 31st, 1949. And he passed away on November 2nd. It's at the bottom. November 2nd, 1949. Around 3:55 a.m. it says here. Harris S. Windorf Major MG Station Hospital. I'm assuming that's got to be the doctor that worked for the Army. And so D, her name is up under block 14, about the middle of the page on the right-hand side. Davada, D-A-V-A-D-A. I'm assuming that's pronounced Davada. May, M-A-E, Elliott. So before her name was Stanley, it was Elliott. Davada May Elliott. So some people have asked if Dee had a miscarriage in the 1960s with Vernon. And this isn't about that particular incident, but in 1949, she had a baby and he didn't do very well. And within a couple of days, he was gone. Now, William Jabe Stanley, who's also listed on here, he's block 13. He's the father. That's Dee's husband. The Stanley boy's father. You know, he's in the Army. So that means he's got duties to attend to. They're not giving him time off to deal with this probably. If they do, it's probably not very much. Dee's got to deal with this on her own. This happened, you know, it wasn't uncommon. It wasn't common in the sense that it happened to a lot of people, but this kind of thing did happen. And when you're an Army wife like this, you basically are on your own unless you can find a circle of Army wives to take care of you or to hear you out on these things. This is the days before people went to a doctor to talk about this kind of thing. So Dee had to, you know, she did deal with this on her own. Now this is another certificate of death, and this one's from 1950. And it's for another infant baby boy Stanley. He was born July 5th, 1950. So let's go back. This young boy, the first one we looked at, he was born late October 1949. And he died in very early November. And the next year, in July, Dee had another baby. And this one lived for 1 day, 9 hours, 35 minutes, it appears. Was born prematurely. The other child was also born prematurely, I saw. Passed away July 5th, 1950, or July 6th. I see a 6 there. So July 6th, 1950? Yeah, that's the date of death. So 1 day old. 1 day, 9 hours, 35 minutes, according to this. So Dee's got a double dose of this. I don't know if Elvis ever knew about this, but it certainly would have made him feel, I think, very tender towards Dee, because his own mother, had dealings with this kind of thing. And Marion says it seems they didn't give their son a name. It does appear that way from these records. Now, we don't know who filled the records in. I don't see that. There are any signatures from either William Stanley or Dee. And so maybe they just hadn't reported the name. Maybe Dee was in really bad shape. These kids were born prematurely. And maybe she just wasn't in the shape to give them a name, or to agree to a name. Or maybe, this is the Army. Again, this looks to be an Army. It's at Fort Campbell, at the station hospital. They fill out forms. Maybe they just filled it out. So I don't know. But on the form, there is no name. Hi, Anna. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. So we're looking at these statements that Dee has made years and years later. They have nothing to do with what we're looking at the moment. But I just like us to remember that, everybody that was around Elvis, they were real people. This is the Stanley boy's father. This is not just a normal, everyday guy in the Army. He was a bodyguard for General Patton. And I've got to go back and find exactly where it says that, so I can read that for sure for you. But you don't get to be a bodyguard for a general unless you're selected by the general to be the bodyguard. And it's because of something you've done. And this was World War II that he fought in. General Patton was World War II. It was a big one. There were a lot of things that had to be done. He's a sergeant. He's a tough guy. That's why he's a bodyguard. It's expected that no one could get through him. And that was basically the kind of guy he was. And Elvis really respected him. And Marion says she would have named her child even if it was stillborn, like Elvis's brother. Absolutely. I think all of us would. So I've got to give Dee the benefit of the doubt that maybe she wasn't in the shape to tell them a name, and maybe, the father's not even around at that moment because the Army has him somewhere else. I don't really know what happened. So I don't want to assume that she didn't give him a name. We just know that a name didn't make it onto the form, and I've dealt with people who fill out forms. I've been one of them. And when you got a lot of forms you got to fill out, you just move forward. And who knows what really happened in that case. But it is terrible that the name did not get recorded on the form. But if she did not give the children names, I mean, it says something else about Dee as well. And it's not something necessarily negative. It's, you know, maybe she just couldn't face it. These are the 3 boys who did make it. So they've really had 5 children by this point. It's just that 2 did not survive. And Dee says that they were living in Badheim, Germany. How do you say this? Badheim, Germany. And that's when she became aware that Elvis Presley was around in Germany. And she says, I was an American abroad, and so was Elvis. So I rang him up and invited him to coffee. He politely said no. But a day or so later, his father Vernon called and asked me to their house for dinner. So a lot of people want to know, how did Vernon and Dee meet? Well, that's a direct quote from Dee. She was exclusively interviewed for this article. So this is a direct quote from her. This is how she says it happened, at least in this article. She called, she was turned down by Elvis, and then Vernon followed up and asked her to their house for dinner. Now, I noticed that she doesn't say that he asked her and her husband, just her. Now, I believe that they were both invited, but I'm not sure. And Marion says that yes, Dee might have been in a real bad mental or physical state. Yeah, we just don't know. But whatever happened, I think we can all assume that she's carried those scars for the rest of her life. That those are deep, deep emotional scars. And they had to have affected her in many ways. A lot of what we see of Dee is simply the terrible things that she said in the public light after Elvis had passed away. And I'm not saying that's not a fair look at Dee, or that she doesn't deserve whatever came out, the consequences from what she said. But there is more to Dee. You know, all the people that were around Elvis were extraordinary in some way. And Dee was married to a guy that was extraordinary before Vernon. And the boys, to some extent, reflected that. He was their father. So there's just so much more, so many more layers to these stories. Hi, Debbie. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And Elizabeth says that she agrees there's more to a person than just one thing. Yeah, you know what? At the end, we can still come out and not like them. I just like to know the whole thing. So she says that she got invited over by Vernon to the house for dinner. And Dee says, from that moment, I became firm friends with Elvis and with his father. It was love at first sight. The article says that love blossomed as her marriage fell apart. And then she and Vernon decided to marry. And the very first person they told was Elvis. Dee says Elvis was feeling sorry for himself at that time, recuperating in a Frankfurt hospital from a tonsils operation. So that is a famous incident that happened to Elvis while he was in Germany. He had to have his tonsils removed. The doctors were very scared. What if they damaged his voice? And Pamela says, would it have been easy to get Elvis's phone number? Yeah, I don't know. When he was over there in Germany for Dee to get his phone number and be able to ring him, you know, it's probably opportunistic. Like, if you knew certain people at the bases, and there's definitely an information network that she might have been able to tap into. If you're aware of where people go, you know, like I think at the time that she called him, I think he might have been at the hotel that he was first at. And then he was famously at that hotel. So with enough calls, you could eventually track down what the number to his room was. Or if you went out and talked to the fans at the gate, or the outside of the hotel, eventually something like that would come through. Now, once he moved to the house, I think that would be harder, but at all times of his life, once he had a phone, because they never even had a phone until he was famous, people would figure out the number, and he'd have to constantly change it. So was it possible? Absolutely. Was it easy? Well, no. Somebody has to put some effort into it. But there were people out there that always knew what his phone number was. And Dee says, you know, he's in that hospital recuperating. And she says, when we broke the news to him, Elvis said with obvious delight, I want my father to be happy, and I think you're a real fine lady. Now, I've never heard before this particular article that Dee told Elvis they were getting married while Elvis was in the hospital in Germany. I mean, maybe I have, but I don't remember it. So if you guys have ever heard that, let me know. Put it in the chat. Put it in the comments. Be sure that you like, hit the subscribe button. Tell other people that you know about Hillbilly Cat history. But I don't think I've ever heard that before. And then he says with obvious delight, I want my father to be happy. Okay, well, that sounds like him. I got to grant that. That sounds like Elvis. And I think you're a real fine lady. Now, at this moment, she's married. And his father is now messing around with a married woman. And they're talking about getting married themselves. Because I don't think her divorce finalizes until she gets back to the United States. Now, I can't swear to that. We'd have to get even deeper into the Dee story. And I haven't reached that point yet. But I don't think that Elvis would have felt she was a real fine lady at that moment. But I could be wrong. He was a very generous, he's a much more generous person than I am. And maybe he wanted his father to feel okay about it. Maybe he'd already accepted it. Maybe he was thinking about other things that were going on in his own life. I don't know. Dee goes on and she says, Elvis then said, you know, I've always wanted a brother and now I've got 3. So apparently he was talking about the boys when they weren't even around, because I don't think they brought the boys to the hospital. Now, again, can't swear to that. Haven't read this hospital story anywhere but here. And Debbie says that she'd heard Elvis was upset with Vernon because Dee's husband was one of Elvis's sergeants. Well, he wasn't one of Elvis's sergeants. He was just in the military as well. But Elvis knew of him because he had been this famous bodyguard for for General Patton. And Elizabeth is saying that's what she'd heard too. Yeah, so I'll have to figure out where he was serving at. I don't think it was even in the same outfit. Like Elvis was in the... Oh, I can't remember it off the top of my head now. Something about the third something, but I don't think that Stanley was in the same thing. He might have been, but he wasn't serving with Elvis in that sense. Like, he wasn't in Elvis's chain of command or anything. And Elizabeth says that she didn't know about this hospital thing. But not that that always means anything. Right. It doesn't even mean it if you read it in a book. Like, it's not meaning anything, even if you had read it. So that's what I keep running into. And Elizabeth says that she'd heard that Elvis was upset because he thought it was too soon. Yeah, they have assigned a lot of different motivations, but Dee's saying he said it was great. That she's a fine lady. He's happy. He's happy because his father's happy. So at least Dee put a nice spin on it, if it is a spin. But it doesn't agree with other things that other people have said, certainly. Dee says that around that time, Elvis had met Priscilla. And Dee says, for me and Priscilla, it was the beginning of a friendship, which has lasted until this day. And that Elvis was enchanted by Priscilla. She was like a china doll with impeccable manners, incredibly beautiful, and a girl with an old-fashioned dress sense. I wonder if that's referencing that sailor outfit she wore the first night. But apparently Dee feels that Priscilla dressed a little old-fashioned. I even wonder if that's a little bit of a dig at Priscilla. And Marion says that she's also heard that Elvis wasn't happy about the marriage, but did welcome the boys with a lot of warmth. I think that's the myth. That's the consensus. That's what people believe. And it's not necessarily not true. That's what we're looking at now. And Pamela says, well, Dee would say everything was fine. Wait a minute. People... they tell these stories through their own self-interest? Maybe they do. Dee says that, and this is 1978, speaking about her and Priscilla. She says, we have spent many lonely days and nights together when our men were on the road. So apparently Dee and Priscilla spent time together. I would assume this is before Priscilla left the picture, got divorced, went on with somebody else. And Dee says, we still speak on the telephone regularly. Now remember, this is 78. So this is a year, more than a year after Elvis has passed away. We still speak on the phone regularly, although I live in Memphis and she is in Los Angeles. I think that indicates these are long distance calls, so somebody's got to pay for them. And Marion says that she would say that Dee did the old-fashioned dressing the most often. Yeah, it's just something that's fun that she got into the article, right? But then she immediately says that her, they're still talking. They're great friends. Hi, Francis. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And Dee says, Vernon and I would call for Priscilla, take her to see Elvis, and watch him play touch football with his army buddies. I guess that's a reference to Germany. So they weren't married at that point in time. So Vernon and Dee on one of their dates, I guess, because that's kind of strange, isn't it? That Vernon and his married girlfriend would go and pick up Priscilla at her parents' house and then take her to watch Elvis play football with the Army guys. I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one that thinks that's odd. And Elizabeth says they do tell for their own benefit to make themselves look good. Yeah, that's why all these stories get published. And Debbie says that she saw a video where Dee was calling out to Priscilla, wanted to talk to her, but Priscilla just said a quick hi. That's funny. I bet that was a lot later than 78, though, right? And Dee says, nothing wrong happened. Elvis knew she was a child still and that he could date any woman he wanted and frequently did. I'm not sure that jives with what she said on Geraldo. Not long after this article was published. But I guess that whole thing was twisted maybe in a different way. But here she's saying that, you know, nothing wrong happened. And then everybody left Germany and they moved to Memphis and into Graceland. And it was a fantastically wealthy but bizarre and unreal world, according to this article. A world which revolved around Elvis going to bed at 8 a.m. and rising at 4 p.m. A world of servants, fabulous gifts, and anything money could buy. It's like Dee got to step into a soap opera or something. It's a television show, and Dee's on the real world of Elvis Presley. And Frances says she's seen reports that Priscilla didn't really care much for Dee. That doesn't match up to what Dee's saying. Now, Dee also says 4 trucks rolled up shortly after we arrived, and they were full of toys for the boys. Elvis had ordered them. They thought it was Christmas. They were 20 years younger, but he adored them. But life at Graceland had its drawbacks. The security was so tight, the boys could not even invite their little friends over to play. The boys could never understand why. Is that true that the boys couldn't invite other children over to play? I've never heard them say that. I mean, I've heard a lot of stories that the Stanleys have told, and I've read their books. I don't remember that popping out at me. Doesn't mean it wasn't in there. It just means I don't remember it. If you do, let me know. In the chat and in the comments. I got a bad memory. My opinions are often wrong. Feel free to put your memories and opinions in the chat and into the comments. Dee says that there was talk of sending the boys away to school, but Elvis stuck his bottom lip out, stomped his foot, and said, no, they're family. They stay here with us. What does this mean that there was talk about sending the boys away to school somewhere? She says, I remember there was once talk. Who talked? Like, Dee allowed people to talk about sending her children away? And then she was like considering it, and it took Elvis to step up and say, hey, we don't send kids away in this family. That's not the way the Presleys operate around here. Now, unfortunately, when Elvis was gone, his own daughter, well, she did get sent away to schools like this. But we can see, I think, right here through what Dee has to say that Elvis did not believe in sending children away to boarding schools. And Debbie says that Billy Stanley says Elvis bought them the whole store when they were little boys, a lot of toys. Yeah, I think David says they came into the front room and it was like Christmas that was full of toys. And Francis says that not much of anything adds up to Dee's version of events. See, that's the truth been hiding out here in Dee's version all these years. And now it's finally free, even though it was published in 1978. And Debbie says he was driving around Memphis and showing the spots where his mother and Priscilla got their hair done, and said Elvis used to pick them up after school and remembered a lot of people around Elvis. Yep, I've seen that clip with Billy driving around there. And Marion says that she doesn't know about friends, but Elvis took them to a fun park and pranked the roller coaster guy. Yep. And Elizabeth says she agrees with Francis that things just don't add up with Dee's version of events. And Debbie says that she doesn't like how Dee was talking trash about Elvis and his mom at the Geraldo show. Yeah, and that doesn't match up what she's saying here, that when he was hanging with Priscilla, nothing wrong happened. Because that's what all that kind of leads to, all that talk that Dee said was to try to lead you into this idea of that Elvis was some kind of pervert and that was the reason that he was with Priscilla. But here Elvis is saying these kids, they got to stay. And Dee says, and when the boys were old enough, Elvis put them on the payroll as aides and constant companions, so that they were almost never out of his sight. Now, if you read David's books, you'll understand they were out of Elvis's sight quite a bit. But Elvis did try to take care of them. Here's a picture of Vernon and Dee. Back when Dee was happy, they were happy together. This is Dee with the 3 young Stanley boys. I think this is about the time that they moved into Graceland. I don't know that this is Graceland. I don't know if this is in Germany, but the boys were roughly this age. Maybe a year older when they moved into Graceland. And this is the boys when they're a bit older and they're holding Lisa Marie. So this is 1968. Ricky is the one that's holding her. I believe David's on the left side of the picture and Billy's on the right. And Marion says that Geraldo show was not to be believed. Billy said he could never really forgive her. Yeah, I would never put any faith in any Geraldo show. And Debbie says that the boys loved their own father and couldn't understand why Dee left him. That she thinks that Billy or David said that. Yeah, so you can see how young they were. And then was Dee able to articulate to them why she left, and if there were issues, exactly what they were? And if she had, would the boys have believed negative things about their father? I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of family dynamics there. But absolutely, I don't think even if she'd ever explained it, that, you know, who would? Who really understands why their parents break up? That's another kind of scar that you carry with you forever. And Debbie says that she thinks that they told their mother why she said that about Elvis and his mom. Yeah. And Elizabeth says Geraldo was pretty bad about everything. Geraldo only cared about Geraldo. He wants to get to the top of the heap, and he crawled over everybody to do it. And Debbie says that she said their father was abusive to her and drank a lot. And see, that's possible. I don't know about any of that. I think she might have described that. And then if she had suffered through that as well, on top of losing the two kids, on top of her previous divorce, I'm assuming her younger life before that may not have been very happy. Again, I don't know anything about Dee, but from the way that her life was expressing itself at that time, things weren't going well for her. Here she is. She's looking fairly good in this picture. I believe this is sometime in the late 1960s, maybe into the early 1970s. Now, I AI colored this picture, but it causes her eyes to look very tired. Like maybe she's been up all night, maybe she's been crying, maybe it's just the way that AI colors the picture. I don't know, but it was a black and white, and the black and white did seem to capture something around her eyes. And Francis says that Dee on the Geraldo show was absolutely terrible. And the unbelievable accusations she said were just sick, and loved how J.D. Sumner and Joe Esposito stood up for Elvis. Yeah, absolutely. The other thing, if you ever watch that clip, you might notice is that there's a man that's with Dee, and he's not related to her. He works for the magazine, the tabloid that's put her up to this. And she looks so strange when she's saying these things. And he's like egging her on next to her. So there's just so many odd things going on in that clip. Not excusing Dee in any way or saying that she didn't say those things or that's not what she thought, or that she should have ever said anything like that in a public setting. But there is a massive number of odd things going on all over that clip. And Debbie says that, yes, she saw how JD stuck up for Elvis and his mother. That's the other amazing thing. How would you be able to put somebody that was going to say something like that next to JD? It just shows that Geraldo had no idea who he ever brought on. And we saw that when he brought on Jeannie LeMay, and he tried to get her to immediately say something nasty about Elvis. And she just, with class, said, oh, he was a wonderful person, and went on to talk about how wonderful he was and just completely shut Geraldo down. But not everybody is as smooth or as good with that. And some people lean into these things, like possibly Dee here. And Francis says, yeah, it was the National Enquirer. And Dee had been messing around with the Star. This is the Star we're looking at now. And the Midnight Globe. And I'm betting they're a lot lower payers. National Enquirer is like the top of that food chain at the time. So she probably thought like that was a super financial deal at the moment. And like all the others, she was probably out of money. And Debbie says Geraldo asked her who told her this about Elvis and his mom, and she said it was Minnie Mae and Vernon. Yeah, so it seemed made up at the moment on the spot. And yet that guy next to her acted like everybody knew this. So it was just so odd. But here's Dee before the Geraldo appearance. This is in 1977 in September. This is before a year, more than a year before the article we're looking at. We've already been over this one in a previous episode. So if you missed that episode, you want to know about this seance that Dee held, you can. It's just back in the archive. But it says, Elvis has spoken to me from beyond the grave. Now, the article we're reading says that this is the first time Dee's ever spoken out. But as we can see right here, well, it wasn't the first time. And we looked at a bunch yesterday that showed it wasn't the first time. This is that article, Stepmother Talks for the First Time. Yet we've already seen at least 5 or 6, and my thinking is there's more like 20 other times she's already talked. I mean, there was all the ones I've showed you were all grouped at the end of 1977. We haven't even looked at the beginning of 1978. And Frances says that she wonders how much money Dee got from her divorce from Vernon. Well, when we looked at this seance, it was all about how Elvis had promised her money from the divorce. The divorce wasn't finalized yet. And by the point that this article comes out, it is. And Debbie says that appears Dee is crazy, that Elvis did not speak to her from beyond the grave. Well, there was a person that spoke in a voice, and Dee confirmed that that person spoke about things that Elvis spoke to her about, and therefore, that was Elvis. I mean, you can't argue with logic like that. Dee says that Elvis lectured the Stanley boys about drink, alcohol, which except for an occasional tequila, Elvis abhorred, and about drugs. So Elvis had talks about substance abuse with the Stanley boys, and apparently he drank some tequila from time to time. Now, I did not know that either. And I don't think that Dee's lying about that. I think she saw him drink tequila at some point. And I think she must have seen him do it more than once. However, if you see Elvis do something one time, it seems to grow in people's minds that it was a constant, everyday, all-day habit. So I don't know whether she saw him, or she saw him more than once, or if it was really tequila, or if she knows what tequila is. I just don't know. I do know that other people have reported other things he drank. He wasn't a regular drinker, but he didn't completely abstain either. He just didn't drink on a regular or a calendared basis, other than holidays happen at calendars. And so that's kind of when he drank, was when everybody else was drinking for a specific holiday. Apparently, according to the article, Dee and her family never intruded on Elvis's private quarters, which sported a king-size bed with 2 color TV sets suspended from the ceiling. Dee says that not long after we returned from Germany, Elvis called me from the dining room, where he was eating breakfast at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and he pulled out a picture of Priscilla. Elvis said he missed Priscilla. And wasn't she the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen? I had to agree. Elvis telephoned Priscilla and asked her to come over from Germany for Christmas. Vernon and I went to New York to meet her, and we took her to Graceland. We had a wonderful time. So much so that when Priscilla was 17, Elvis asked her parents if she could come and live with us, meaning Vernon and Dee. Elvis was already grooming her for marriage. By that time, Vernon and I had left Graceland. We had been there 2 years and got a home of our own in the Hickory Hills section of Memphis. Priscilla moved in with us. I wonder if Dee's aware that Elvis bought that house that they got on their own and moved into. She said, we got a home of our own. And when they got, what she means is they received a home of their own from Elvis. Now, Vernon did work for Elvis, and perhaps this was a way of doing this so that, taxes didn't have to be paid on the money, and you could move things around and get more bang for the buck. And of course, Elvis would have been all in on that for his dad. But the money technically came from Elvis. And Debbie says that people who died can't talk to you. It's in the Bible. It had to be a demon that talked to her. Well, in this case, it was a paid psychic. So I don't know if the paid psychic had a demon in them, but I think they did have dollars in their wallet that National Enquirer had quietly slipped in there in order to, there were 2 seances. And so I think there was money that was spread around. And Francis says, do not believe that Billy Smith said Elvis did not like to drink and rarely drank alcohol. And he's correct. He rarely drank. It's at least according to all the stories that are out there, but there are stories. There's a schnapps story, and there's a story about a couple of New Year's Eves. There's, I think, a story around fireworks. There are some other stories, but they're about people that were drunk around him. So there was some alcohol around, and he sometimes partake, but mostly he banned it and didn't want it around and didn't allow it. So it was most of the time no. And Marion's saying that John Wilkinson said you could always bring children to Elvis's parties because there was no alcohol. That's true as well. When he brought people up from the gate or he had people in for a party, he did not have alcohol. If he rented a place like they did for the New Year's Eve parties, those places normally served alcohol. And so that went forward. Their normal stuff happened. Most of the stories about Elvis and drinking, they occur with just the guys, or they're in a club that has to do with alcohol, or, there's alcohol in the setting, but there's never any kids. No. And Elizabeth says that she doesn't believe any of that has been said by Dee about Elvis and Priscilla by Dee. Well, it is true that she came for the Christmas and they went to pick her up. I didn't realize they'd gone to New York. That's quite a trip. And Francis says that Dee did not even attend Vernon's funeral. I didn't know that. That's interesting. I don't know. Is it normal for ex-wives to attend funerals, though? I don't know. And Marion says that it's nearly impossible to believe her after that Geraldo show. Oh, yeah, I wouldn't put any faith in anything she says. It's just that it's out there in this article. And Marion says that she thinks there's nothing wrong with drinking on special occasions. Yeah, I don't think, it's a problem if it's a problem. It's not a problem if you responsibly handle it and it's being used for celebrations and stuff. He rarely did it. It's just something that people do. It's like the smoke and the cigars and the other thing. He was in control enough that nobody ever noticed that he was doing it most of the time. So he couldn't have been a chain smoker because people noticed that. And Elizabeth says that he did not groom Priscilla into being his wife. Yeah, that is a definitely something that Dee is overlaying on this, that she is seeing herself, and it tells you something about what Dee's motivations would be to have somebody around like that. Like, that's, if she was Elvis, she would be grooming this person. That's the way that she sees it. Now, we've still got a bunch more of this article to go. And we've hit the hour again. So I guess we're going to have to come back to it one more time because we didn't make it all the way through on this one. And I know you guys want to hear the other things that Dee has to say. And then I've got so many more articles to show you guys. We've got a lot of content coming. And of course, I just have tons and tons of other Elvis stories too. So we've still got to finish out this article, and then we're going to be moving on to some new stuff. And Francis says that it depends on how your relationship is after a divorce as to whether the ex shows up at the funeral, and that she had a crazy divorce, but for the sake of her sons, they're doing fine, and they're very cordial, and he offers to help anytime I need it. That's nice that you can have that kind of relationship with your ex. It's definitely more rare, I think, than people who are not able to get along at all. And it really speaks to the depth of your original relationship and the depth of you both as people. And Debbie saying thanks. Thank you, Debbie, for coming. I appreciate it. I appreciate each and every one of you and the time that you spend here with me. We're going to go out of here on a song. We're going to go out on the flip side of the song that I played at the beginning. That was Heartache and Frustration. And this is Frustration and Heartache. You all keep on taking care of business.
He walked through the chapel, vows gone too fast. Flashbulbs were burning, but the moment didn't last. He carried us singing, sunlight in their bed, but the silence kept whispering inside her head. He's stuck in a hotel of love he can't hold. Every room is crowded, every story grows cold. Frustration's his shadow, it won't let him be. Heartbreak keeps knocking, oh, flames he can see. He called her my wife, kissed her in the light. She cooked his bacon, held him through the night. But her picture was simple, just two alone, while the world kept intruding. Love turned to stone. Their eyes met again, the fire still strong. He dropped to one knee, said he loved her all along. But the door closed behind them, the moment couldn't stay. She felt the heat fading as he walked away on the speedway set. She fell in too deep. He kissed her softly, a secret she keep. I'm sorry, he whispered, then he let her go. Now she treasures the memory more than you'll know. He's stuck in a hotel of love he can't hold. Every room is haunted, every story grows cold. Frustration and heartache, they echo through time. Three women, one singer, lost lost in the ride. If love's a hotel, he's trapped in the hall. Doors keep on closing, he can't find home at all.
I hear him loading up the stories, I hear him dialing up the dates, I hear his brothers turning witnesses to the pain he couldn't shake. Says everything he got from him, but I can hear the hurt behind it like a crack of blame. Dave's boiling blood is pounding on the gates of Grace Lane, shouting, face me like a man, but never knowing he was hurting. He left town in the night, not to hide, just to breathe, but they took it as a knife, as a wound they couldn't leave. They say this life, they say they stood their ground, but he was burning from the inside, and they never heard the sound. Face me like a man, he gave love and friendship every chance, but it slipped right through their fingers, ship and swallowed by the cracks of time. Sabotage his name, no sabotage in their own pain. They loved him, yeah, he knows it, but they love the legend more than me. Friends calling every friend Elvis ever had, asking dates, asking stories, turning memories into shrapnel for a book full of worries. Says he wrote it for the money, then he says he wrote it out of love, but love don't come with lawyers and a push from up above. Dave bursts in a gumboat on his hip, says he ain't here to hurt, just wants to look him in the eye and hear the words again. But the wolves were in the fall, the wolves they never saw. They saw the jumpsuits in the spotlight, not the threat behind the wall. They say they knew his shape, they say they knew his fall, but they only saw the surface while he was screaming through it all. Face me like a man, he loved and friendship every chance, but it slipped right through their fingers, ship and swallowed by the cracks of time. Sabotage his name, no sabotage in their own pain. They loved him, yeah, he knows it, but they love the legend more than that. He called red when he knew the book was coming. His voice was shaking like a sinner in the pew. He wasn't angry, his heart was broken. He was scared of losing those with whom he shared the truth. And when the radio said his name that August morning, they pulled their cars to the side of the road. They cried, they froze, they remembered the man they couldn't reach anymore. Face me like a man, he was dying in slow motion, trying to hold the world together with a heart that lost devotion. Sabotage my name, no, this was always a two-way flame. You loved him, yeah, he know it, but you couldn't see the man. Never meant to lose you, you were never meant to run. He didn't want to face the end.